Hey, this is Daniel with the Nostril, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most recent releases, I think the second last release from the house of Amouage, which comes from the country of Oman. In fact, I believe Amouage is owned by the Sultanate of Oman. I'm talking about Amouage Portrayal Man, the second last release from the house before the departure of longtime creative director, Christopher Chong. This is a total win in my books in terms of releases from Amouage. The way that the violet note in here blends with a slightly smoky green and floral cade oil and vetiver, which is again slightly smoky and slightly earthy, but mainly green. This is a green scent to die for. To me, it comes across as clean, it comes across as sophisticated, it comes across as approachable and friendly, and maybe just a little bit artistic and bohemian. Absolutely wonderful. So if you want to hear a little bit more about the note breakdown, what this smells like, the situations where it's going to be appropriate to wear it, pricing and availability, stay tuned. We're going to talk about it today. You know, Amouage is one of my favorite niche houses, and I suppose they're an independent house too, because they aren't owned by a big conglomerate or multinational corporation. Like, for example, Guerlain is owned by LVMH, for example. But there's very few releases from the house of Amouage that have disappointed me in the men's line, and to be fair, also in the women's line too. I own two scents from the Amouage women's line, Myths Woman and Beach Hut Woman, and they're both fantastic. But let's talk a little bit about the scent that I meant to be talking about today from the very beginning, Portrayal Man, the second last release from Christopher Chong's creative direction from the house of Amouage. Christopher Chong, some of you may or may not know, was responsible for some of the house's most well-known and celebrated scents, including Jubilation 25, Interlude Man, Lyric Man, Memoir Man, one of my personal favorites and a very divisive scent as well, Figment Man. If you haven't tried Figment Man and you like earthy animalic scents, you owe it to yourself to try it out. But in terms of earthy and animalic, Portrayal Man is anything but. This is not really challenging in the way that some Amouage fragrances can be. It is entirely pleasant, especially if you like violet leaf. The star of the show, the absolute star of the show, is violet leaf here. Now, the fact that this is a violet leaf heavy fragrance has made quite a few people, in fact, if you go on Fragrantica, the only smells like comparison with 25 votes is that this smells like Dior Fahrenheit, the famous petroleum violet scent from the 1980s. Now, I get where people are coming from. They're both violet-forward fragrances, and so of course they're going to smell similar. There's even a little bit more similarity than that. The particular way the violet is coming across in Portrayal Man, it's a little similar to the way the violet is coming across in Fahrenheit. But there are some pretty important differences too. These two scents do not smell the same. There are similarities, but they don't smell the same. But before I get into comparing and contrasting, for those of you who've never smelled the original Fahrenheit, what does Portrayal Man smell like? Let me spray it on my skin so you can kind of see. I can give you a play-by-play of the way the scent develops on my skin over a few minutes. So like most Amouage scents, the sprayer here is pretty good. It's not like the most amazing sprayer ever, which you'd imagine for a scent that costs $320 retail. You'd want it to have a really good sprayer, but it's a decent sprayer. It's above average. Here you go. It doesn't have an enormous diffusion, but it does spray quite a bit per pump. But I'm kind of disappointed at the overall angle of the spray. But, so right off the bat, you get just an utter blast of violet leaf. It's green and slightly bitter, but also slightly creamy as well in the way that violet leaf can work. And it's glorious. If you like green scents, this is one to check out. Now, right at the very beginning, there is an ozonic note that happens. Don't mind my hound. She just wants to go outside right now, and she was barking too much, so she had to come in. But the ozonic notes here that are really only mainly present at the very beginning of the scent, they're airy, they're pleasant, they're maybe a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? They're maybe a little bit strong, to be perfectly honest. I think the ozonic notes here do lend a kind of slightly chemically quality in the way that ozone really does smell. If you ever smelled pure ozone, I mean, you don't want to smell too much of that because it's not very healthy for you. But if you've ever had the chance just to smell ozonic air, it does have that kind of particularly blend of weird petrichor and chemical kind of going on. That's definitely here. And that's common with violet scents. It's pretty nice, but smelled up close, it can be a bit much. In the air, as this scent is wafting around when you're smelling it, it smells really good. The opening is incredible, in fact, and that kind of slightly chemically ozonic quality really does blend well with the air. It actually makes the air smell kind of like there's just some weird petrichor ozone thing going on around. It's really nice. But really, the star of the show here is when the scent starts to dry down. And it started to already. Already there is a little bit of cade oil coming out and vetiver to support the cade oil. Now cade oil comes from, it's derived from juniper. And so now you expect juniper to have that kind of 90s era tart, slightly fruity, slightly spicy smell that a lot of fragrances from the 90s had. I think of, what's a good example of that? The original Portrayal 360 is juniper heavy. It has that really sharp note. But cade oil doesn't have that. Cade oil is quite a bit smoother. It's a little bit smoky. It's maybe even slightly creamy. Slightly creamy. The cream here, there is a creamy facet to this scent, but it's just a supporting note. It's under the surface a little bit. But the way that the cade oil is blending with the violet leaf here, it's gorgeous. And there's something about the interaction of the smoothness of the cade oil, the smooth, slight smokiness of the cade oil and the violet leaf that makes this sweet. Not in a particularly potent or notable way, but it's there. As this dries down, it gets sweeter, and the sweeter I find that it gets, the more pleasant it gets. It's just really, it's really refined and kind of carefree. As I said earlier, it smells a bit bohemian. It smells a bit kind of artistic. Like I'd expect someone who is more interested in creativity of self-expression than attending to already established norms to wear a scent like this. It smells like an adventurous spirit, but one that's also kind of a little bit cautious and a little bit refined. It's a really nice scent. There's nothing kind of wildly out of bounds going on here. This is a refined, simple scent that is incredibly well blended. Now there's also vetiver going on here. The vetiver here is really grassy, it's really green, and it's mild, especially compared to the violet leaf, which again is the total star of the show. And the vetiver here, maybe there's a little bit of a, you can have an earthy vetiver as well. Is that Haitian vetiver that's earthy? I forget what kind of vetiver is earthy or not. And I think it's really in the process of extraction and the way that it's macerated and all that as well. So I'm not sure if you can associate a specific country's production of vetiver with a specific quality, but the way that it's working here is really just as a supporting note. The cade oil and even more so than the cade oil, the violet leaf is doing the real work here. So this is incredibly powerful. It's strong. The performance is fantastic. 10 hours on my skin, easy. If I wear this, I actually love to wear this scent to bed. It's so comforting and interesting. I get whiffs of it in my dreams. It's really nice. But beyond that, it's a great work scent too. It especially if you are in a situation where you need to come across as approachable, yet kind of self-assured and maybe maybe self-confident. This scent it has that vibe going on, absolutely. And just to bring in Fahrenheit a little bit here, it doesn't have any of that like uber masculine, manly man vibe. The petrol, there is an incredibly mild petroleum note that's more present at the beginning, maybe owing a little bit to that ozonic quality, that kind of petrichor note that comes out at the very beginning. But it goes away pretty quickly, and by the time this scent is developed into what it's going to be, it doesn't really exist anymore. This isn't a petroleum, gassy smelling violet at all. But as I was saying, whereas Fahrenheit is kind of really has the reputation of being a hyper masculine scent, which is strange because it's kind of a floral green scent. Amouage doesn't really have the Portrayal doesn't really have that sense. It's certainly still a masculine smelling scent if you take gender labels seriously, but it leans a little bit unisex. I think really anyone can pull this off, especially if you like green scents. It's going to be certainly one of the most interesting and highly regarded green scents in my collection. Others like it, and I love it. But let's compare it to Fahrenheit now. So the main difference, of course, is going to be that there is a pretty noticeable leather note in Fahrenheit, and maybe that's partially what contributes to the petroleum quality. But that may just be a quality of the violet as well, smelling a little bit like gasoline. But let's go. Here's Fahrenheit. The sprayer on Fahrenheit's better. Dior just does atomizers really well. Yeah, that leather note is there right away, and it's almost got, there is a fruity leatheriness to the very beginning of Fahrenheit that there's nothing like that going on in Portrayal Man at all. And that gasoline is there right away. So there's an element of the greenness of the violet leaf that are the same in these two. But even right off the bat, they're very different scents. You know, I came into this review thinking that I was going to have to be a little bit more subtle and kind of breaking down the differences between Portrayal and Fahrenheit. But honestly, right off the bat, these smell different. I can see if I hadn't smelled Fahrenheit in a while, smelling Portrayal Man and going, oh, that smells a lot like Fahrenheit, because the violet note really does. There's a similar greenness perhaps going on with the violet leaf. But side by side, no, these are different fragrances. I like Fahrenheit. I wear it quite a bit. But this is smoother. It's a bit more floral. It's a bit smokier, whereas this is certainly more leathery. And this is smokier in a really smooth sense. It's kind of a creamy smoke, if that makes any sense. It's also more humid. There's a dryness to Fahrenheit that probably owes in part to the leather note. It is a dry leather that's going on there. Green, but dry. But the humidity, the dewiness, the condensation feeling of Portrayal Man is quite notable in comparison. This is a much wetter scent. Now the Fahrenheit's drying down a little bit, and the leather and the green accords are starting to meld together a little bit. The gasoline note's fading away. No, it's still there. But it's maybe becoming part of an overall Fahrenheit accord rather than being three separate notes: leather, violet leaf, and gasoline. And so maybe I'm starting to smell a little bit more similarity in kind of the overall impression of these two scents. But they're still notably different. And you know, now that I'm thinking about it, for those of you who've tried Fahrenheit Le Parfum, which by the way is an amazing scent, if you have not tried Fahrenheit Le Parfum and can somehow get your hands on a sample or a bottle, do it. But Fahrenheit Le Parfum came out years and years, and the 2012, I think. It is a thoroughly modernized, updated parfum version of Fahrenheit. Got that violet leaf accord, the star of the show, but it's supported by suede leather, vanilla, It's a bourbon vanilla, and well, there's a bourbon whiskey accord going on in there too. It's absolutely fantastic. But they've toned down the gasoline and the leather, the dry leather note in Fahrenheit Le Parfum, and the greenness in Fahrenheit Le Parfum is awfully similar to the greenness in Portrayal Man. Now, there's a lot more going on in Fahrenheit Le Parfum, and so that's only one aspect of it, but if I were to say where the similarity really lies, it's in the way that the violet leaf is treated in Fahrenheit Le Parfum rather than Fahrenheit EDT. So, honestly, at the end of the day, I gotta say, the comparisons between these two are way overstated. These are doing really different things. I mean, and beyond the fact that, yeah, they both have a really prominent violet note, I don't know. Those 25 votes that this smells similar to this, I'm not on board. I think that this is a really, really unique scent, and that it's doing a bunch of things different and perhaps better than the original Fahrenheit EDT. Now, don't get me wrong. Fahrenheit EDT is one that I reach for quite a bit. It is an incredibly artistic, floral, masculine scent, green, leathery, just potent, wonderful. Even the newer reformulations, which have lost a little bit of their luster, I still like wearing them. They're really nice. But this is in a class of its own. I love Portrayal by Amouage. It just sings off of my skin and suits the kind of vibe that I generally want to give off to people as I'm meeting them. Friendly, accessible, enthusiastic, creative, not intimidating, but self-assured at the same time. That's kind of the sense of masculinity that I appreciate and like and want to give off, and I think that's what this scent accomplishes really well, just in terms of vibe. Now, in terms of pricing, I got this, I think, for $150 from eDiscount Perfumes. It's an eBay retailer. They have a website as well, but I've only ever purchased them from eBay. Totally legit, amazing seller. A little bit slow to ship sometimes, but great prices on Amouage and a few other scents. Thank you, Dax. And highly recommended from me. So I think this is still on sale as of this video for $150. So I'd highly recommend at least finding a sample somewhere. But if you like violet leaf and you like ozonic green scents that dry down to be sweet and approachable and calm and friendly, but also self-assured, this is going to be a win for you too. I think I mentioned before, longevity on this is excellent. 10 hours on my skin. Projection is good, above average, but I would not want this scent to be a beast. It would be overwhelming. It would be too strong. This is the kind of scent that you want to get whiffs of in the wind when you're walking by me, rather than something that announces itself as soon as I enter the room. This is a scent to be discovered, not to be forced upon someone. And I think so. I think the sillage and projection are actually appropriate for the kind of scent that this is. So this review has gone a little bit long. I just couldn't stop talking about how these two feel different to me. I apologize. And Dax had something to say too. But if you have any questions that I haven't answered in this review, please feel free to leave a comment below. And I do hope that if you're into green scents, you get the chance to try Amouage Portrayal Man. It is fantastic. Total win from me. Thanks very much for listening, and stay tuned for more reviews in the coming days. See you soon, folks.